Wait. So the NSC took out the 38th parallel. They don't mention it at all. But that's big. We've heard about it every week for the past 11 months. Yeah. Bye. May 27th, 1951. The Chinese spring offensive continues, but the Chinese and North Koreans face a new challenge this week. A UN counteroffensive all along the lines. I'm Indy Neidell, and this is the Korean War. Last week in Washington, D.C., the MacArthur hearings continued, with George Marshall taking very much anti-MacArthur positions. In the field, the Chinese and North Koreans resumed their spring offensive, attacking hard in the eastern side of the peninsula. U.S. 8th Army Commander Jim Van Fleet was pretty confident last week that the Eastern Front would stabilize after being hit pretty hard, and that his counteroffensive all along the lines would go off well. But even as last week ended, there was no guarantee he was going to be right. I mean, U.S. 2nd Division manned a 25-kilometer front that had gaps in it. And what if the Chinese could get behind the remnants of ROK, South Korean 3rd Corps, and turn the whole U.S. 10th Corps flank? We know that the Chinese 9th Army Group was bringing up ever more force the 19th. However, there were some indications that the enemy was running out of steam anyhow. Pummeling by B-29s and artillery the 19th and 20th kept them from launching anything major or close to major against 2nd Division. On the 21st, though, attacks do come against ROK 3rd Corps and the left of ROK 1st Corps by both the Chinese and the North Koreans. These attacks continue into the evening. Van Fleet orders ROK 3rd Corps to make 0 further withdrawals and to gain defensive positions north of Route 20. ROK 1st is to fall back to positions along Route 20, the Waco line, all the way to the coast. ROK 3rd Corps still has real problems, as they did last week, and its 2 divisions, 3rd and 9th, are hit hard the 22nd and dispersed, with their command posts even overrun. This dispersal is the second time in just days this has happened. So late the 22nd, Van Fleet orders ROK 3rd Corps headquarters deactivated, and ROK 3rd Division goes to ROK 1st Corps, ROK 9th Division to US 10th Corps, and 10th Corps is now responsible for ROK 3rd Corps sector. He also puts ROK 1st Corps under his own direct command. But as Van Fleet dispatched these orders near midnight on the 22nd, the composite of recent and current reports from the front confirmed a general enemy withdrawal. Yep. See, in the west and center of Korea, U.S. 1st Corps and 9th Corps have been advancing since the 20th, but just making enemy contact is progressively getting more difficult. See, some Chinese units, particularly 12th and 15th Armies, took such crippling losses last week that Chinese Commander Peng Dehuai has called off his whole offensive. The inability to make any effective attacks against 10th Corps after the 18th has put all his forces to the east in danger, since any advance just makes them go further out on a shrinking branch of a tree. So he calls for a really rapid retreat with only light delaying actions, except in places where they absolutely have to fight to keep withdrawal routes open. I'll tell you how that goes, and then I'll finally get into the counterattack. Now, a general objective of Peng's is to get the Hwachon Reservoir to again be the boundary between the Chinese and North Korean forces. And that's designated as the limit of the withdrawal, too. The Chinese armies to the southeast and south of the reservoir are going to have to try hard to not cause a huge traffic jam getting there. The plan is for 20th and 27th Armies, from 9th Army Group, to go around the reservoir's east end, then along the northern bank to the west end. 20th Army will then fortify between Hwachon Town and the reservoir. 27th behind them. KPA, North Korean 5th Corps, will set up between the reservoir and Inje, and KPA 2nd Corps east of that. Chinese 3rd Army Group will withdraw around the west of the reservoir. From south of Chonchon, PVA, Chinese 60th Army, will hold Route 17 open with delaying actions so 15th and 12th Armies can pass below the reservoir and then northwest into the Iron Triangle. 60th will then pass behind 20th at Hwachon. West of the Pukhan River, 19th Army Group will pull back to the northwest to the upper Imjin River and Iron Triangle. KPA 1st Corps in the west is slated to pull back beyond the lower Imjin and then west beyond the Yesong River, where they will rest and refit. Right. Counterattack. The point of the big UN counterattack is to try to reach the main bodies of the enemy forces before they can either disappear or build defenses. This has been a real challenge the past month. So for Frank Milburn and William Hogue, U.S. 1st and 9th Corps commanders, speed is of the essence when their attacks begin the 20th. Milburn's divisions are headed for the Topeka line, like 25 or so kilometers above Seoul's defense system. ROK 1st Division towards Munsan-ni, U.S. 1st Cavalry Division through Uijeongbu, and U.S. 25th Division along Route 3. Hogue is sending his 4 divisions, U.S. 24th, ROK 2nd, ROK 6th, and U.S. 7th, forward to an intermediate line called the Georgia Line, centered on the east-west part of the Pukan River near the Chongpyong Reservoir. ROK 1st Division is in Munsan-ni already the morning of the 21st, and by the evening of the 23rd, all of Milburn's divisions are at Topeka Line. But KPA 1st Corps and PVA 63rd Army are pulling back faster than Milburn's guys can advance, so there's no solid contact. 9th Corps' advance is slower, but this is not because of Hogue. After short advances against light resistance to 20th, he gives his commanders a dressing down and demands more speed, but advances are even slower the 21st, so he demands they advance at least 10 kilometers to 22nd, which would take them past the Georgia line and hopefully to the main body of the enemy. But attacks that day reach the line and go no further. On the 23rd, U.S. 7th Division is to relieve 1st Marine Division from 10th Corps and get ready to attack on the Chuncheon-Hwacheon axis. Hogue has also swapped U.S. 24th and ROK 2nd Division's positions on his left. He's still trying to get his forces moving that day and tells them they can bypass enemy forces as large as the company level to go faster. But few make it more than 7 kilometers or so that day anyhow, though the 21st Infantry does take Kapyong. I mentioned 10th Corps, and the 23rd is when they begin their counterattack. Corps Commander Ned Allman wants U.S. 3rd Division to focus its attacks a few kilometers east of Habaje, where the Soksari-Habaje Road connects with a road that heads to the coast at Yangyang. Allman attaches ROK 8th and 9th Divisions for this move. He's also got U.S. 2nd Division with 187th Airborne Regimental Combat Team to attack towards India, and the 1st Marine Division, who were relieved in the lines by 7th Division, as I just said, is to advance on Yanggu. These two spearheads will hopefully trap the enemy east of Route 24 so he can be destroyed. However, the Marine attacks run into incredibly rough ground, with peaks and valleys that limit them to around 6 kilometers of gains. 2nd Division's advance is similar, but this is because of enemy delaying actions. It was obvious, especially in the 1st and 9th Corps zones, that a head start and fast marches so far had allowed the main enemy bodies to withdraw well out of reach of the counterattack. General Van Fleet was nevertheless confident that his forces, because of the light opposition to their advance, still had a better than even chance of blocking the enemy's main withdrawal routes, and on the 24th, pressed Milburn, Hogue, and Allman to quicken the pace of their attacks and seize their road center objectives. He specifically thinks 10th Corps and ROK 1st Corps doing a squeeze play can trap 3 Chinese armies and 2 KPA Corps east of Route 24, though he does have hope for all of his corps. In the west, the advances are rapid, and 1st Corps reaches the Kansas line by the 27th, but all major enemy formations over there have withdrawn too quickly for real contact. 9th Corps sends force from 7th Division, the 24th, towards Chonchon, and Task Force Hazel takes it that afternoon. There's an issue though. 7th Division Commander Claude Farrenbaugh, following behind Task Force Hazel, runs into a Chinese blocking force, and he is then missing for hours since no one knows that. He gets back to his lines after dark, but all the anxiety has caused Task Force Hazel to get orders to withdraw from Chonchon. They do this, reinforce, return, and encounter no Chinese on the road or in the town. But aerial observers now spot what they say is thousands of Chinese on Route 17 and thousands more on the ground between Route 17 and the road north from Kapyong. This is an opportunity. The 17th Infantry is sent to Chuncheon and then north to hit the Chinese and be the right pincer of a pincer movement, with the 21st Infantry moving north up the Kapyong Road as the left one. They've actually come within 10 kilometers or so of meeting up and surrounding the enemy by day's end. They actually do it the morning of the 26th, with the 19th Regiment from ROK 6 Division joining them. The encircled Chinese are then pounded by airstrikes and artillery. Also the 25th, PVA 12th and 15th Armies are passing below Huachuan Reservoir, heading for Huachuan Town, maybe 12,000 troops strong. A patrol from 17th Infantry sent north finds them the 26th, but it's too late to catch them. But one prize cornered is better than none. The Chinese do attempt to punch out of the trap yesterday and today, of course, but to no avail. Today, the prisoner toll is around 2,000, but a total sweep of the area tomorrow will raise that by many, many thousands of POWs. 17th Infantry enters Huachuan Town today at 2 p.m., but cannot advance further. And tomorrow, aerial observers will pronounce the ground below Huachuan Reservoir clear of the enemy. 9th Corps estimates for their counterattack are over 73,000 enemy casualties, 44,705 killed, 19,753 wounded, and 8,749 captured. For the whole month of May, 9th Corps takes 341 men killed, 2,011 wounded, and 195 missing. 10th Corps also attacks the 24th, but it forms for the attack so slowly that Neidell explodes with fury and even relieves battalion commanders for their tardiness. Still, by the end of the day, the armor has advanced and scattered some Chinese formations, and they hold good ground on the lower bank of the Soyang River. And Almond is issuing hard orders for 10th Corps and ROK 1st Corps to trap the enemy. This is easier ordered than done, though. And though some small units are destroyed the 25th, by the 26th, enough enemy has escaped that there's really only one opportunity left to trap them: the Hyunri-Inja Road and the area north of it where they will likely pass. Artillery, fighter bombers, and B-26s blanket the area and produce serious casualties. But 38th Infantry's attack towards Hyunri is stopped by mines and North Koreans, and 23rd Infantry is stopped short of Inja by a KPA blocking position. Today, the 27th, Task Force Baker leads another attack against Inja. Rain and heavy clouds limit aerial action, but those planes that get up report thousands of the enemy streaming northward. They also report 7,000 on the Hyunri-Inja Road who could maybe be rolled up from the south. But 38th Infantry cannot fight their way in and occupy Hyunri until late in the day, so they're too late again. ROK 1st Corps takes Yangyang on the coast already the 26th, so they are in positions they want to be in, just too late to catch the enemy as well, for he has gone. Van Fleet has plans to widen the counteroffensive and extend it, but that is for the future. And now, I'll turn to Washington to talk about the recent past. Okay, there's been something going on the past couple of weeks there. By the time of General MacArthur's removal, a tacit agreement had emerged within the administration concerning policy towards Korea. The objective was an end to the fighting and a return to the status quo. The mission of 8th Army was to inflict enough attrition on the foe to induce him to settle on these terms. Thing is, this had only been written up in a redraft by the State Department of NSC 48/2, which was still awaiting action by President Harry Truman. Then this new draft was revised by people from the State and Defense Departments and the JCS. It has some changes, like all references to the 38th parallel are gone. On April 26, it was put on the NSC agenda as NSC 48/3. The Joint Chiefs commented on it before the meeting, though, focusing on the paragraph that says the United States should seek a settlement acceptable to the United States of the Korea problem, which would, as a minimum, terminate hostilities, end the aggression, and provide against its resumption. Until such a settlement is achieved, military action should continue in order to penalize the aggressor and deny him the exploitation of his aggression. The Joint Chiefs say this is not comprehensive enough to formulate actual military policy. The Council sends it back to the NSC senior staff, who work on it some more. The next version, NSC 48/4, has expanded the statement of objectives. Now they seek an end to the war under appropriate armistice arrangements, a settlement that restores everything below the 38th parallel, it's back, to the Republic of Korea, allow the ROK Army to be built up to the point that the U.S. can leave Korea, but that all that should not preclude a larger agreement that allows for a unified democratic Korea, and resistance to aggression will, of course, continue. The new version drew JCS criticism because it implied that the indefensible line of the 38th parallel might be restored as a political boundary. Any settlement, they told Secretary Marshall on the 11th of May, should give the Republic of Korea a northern boundary so located as to facilitate both administration and military defense, and in no case south of the 38th parallel. This comment was transmitted to the Council. On the 15th of May 1951, the senior staff circulated an amendment to NSC 48/4, altering the relevant paragraph to incorporate the substance of the JCS views. The Council debated this last week on the 16th, and most of the debate was around this paragraph and defining actual objectives in Korea. It was pointed out that at no time had the U.S. ever had the unification of Korea as a military objective. U.S. Army Chief of Staff Lightning Joe Collins, representing Chairman of the Joint Chiefs Omar Bradley at the meeting, says, yeah, that's true technically, but UN Command had a directive to clear all communist forces from Korea. UN Forces Commander Matt Ridgway, though, does not think he has the force to do this, so he wants clarification. Collins says that if they approve NSC 48/4, it'll probably be used by UN Command as a basis for military directives that do not require all communist forces to be driven from Korea by force. No one argues with this, and the Council then approves NSC 48/4. Harry Truman approves it the 17th, and its final form is thus NSC 48/5. There is an additional paragraph that says that an acceptable political settlement in Korea would be one that does not mess with the U.S. position with regard to Formosa, the USSR, or giving Communist China a seat in the UN. And while they want to do all the stuff I mentioned before, military action shall continue, not to unify Korea by force, but to cause maximum enemy losses, to prevent South Korea from falling, and to sabotage communist capabilities for actions elsewhere. The overall U.S. objective in Asia was to develop free and independent nations and to reduce or eliminate the preponderant power of the Soviet Union. Political, diplomatic, and economic action against China would continue, and plans would be drawn for military action against that country in the event of Chinese aggression outside of Korea. Everyone is pretty satisfied with this policy directive. That's not all that's been going on in Washington lately. The Senate hearings into Harry Truman's dismissal of Douglas MacArthur have been in progress, and they continue this week. And the evidence from the military men is pretty clear that MacArthur was out of line and Truman was well within his authority for firing him. On the 24th, the Republicans call for an end to the hearings. Iowa Senator Burke Hickenlooper suggests they not call the three service chiefs for testimony, but just read them what's already been said and see if they agree with it. Hickenlooper is eager to get past the military stuff and get to attacking Secretary of State Dean Acheson, whom he thinks could be vulnerable. But Democrat Senator Richard Russell is the chairman of the hearings. Senator Russell demurred. The Republicans had been loud in demanding the hearings and generous in condemning the administration. The Republicans had used the word whitewash. Russell gave no quarter. The committee would sit until every relevant witness had been heard. The Democratic majority had another reason for dragging on the hearings. One means of smothering public indignation is to so overwhelm the citizenry with a subject that they tire of it. For 3 weeks, the MacArthur hearings dominated the news, to the point where the American public was ready to turn to summer vacation and baseball. But the hearings shall continue, and Dean Acheson will be the next one called for testimony. But that is in the future. And for now, this week of the war is over, with 8th Army counterattacks everywhere that mainly fail to engage the enemy, but do manage at one point to round up an awful lot of them. Going to get back to the Senate hearings. I'll end today with a quote from David Halberstam's The Coldest Winter about them, and the Republican call this week to end them. The hearings represented a great education for Americans about the complexity of the world they now inhabited. Many who had thought Washington did not have a larger policy for dealing with the communist world began to understand the containment policy that had been put in place. None of this painful process of education was what the Republicans who had pushed for the hearings, smelling blood in the water, wanted. Senator Bork Hickenlooper suggested to Russell the hearings were taking too much time. That was a sign that the great Republican hoped that they could use the hearings to reveal a vast gap between the Truman people and the uniformed military was dying. The hearings were going to run their course, and every day they lasted, MacArthur shrank further on the political landscape. The political landscape of this era is very interesting, and not just in the US or Korea, but around the world. We cover that in our War to War series on the Time Ghost History channel, so do not miss that. And Sophia Glover is the Time Ghost Army member of this week. It is the Army that allows us to do all of this. So for ever more content, join the Army at timeghost.tv or patreon.com. Do not forget to subscribe. See you next time.